Before we start the webinar, just know that this will be recorded. You have the opportunity to ask questions. There is here in Webinar Geek, but we also have a Mentimeter that I'll show in a minute. And afterwards, we'll send you the slides. So if you want to recap what we said, the slides will be available. So the agenda, indeed, what we already said. First, we're going to say why the Medallion architecture falls short. We're going to do a brief introduction of what it is again, why it falls short, and then what do we see as an alternative? How do we structure data for self-service without losing control? Because there's some other things that can happen. And then we're also going to show this in a very practical way and how you can get organized using our data product portal, which is an open source tool that can facilitate this transition. All right, Christophe, let's begin with the beginning, right? Why the Medallion architecture falls short for modern organizations.
Yeah, so the main thing that triggered me writing the blog post was when we were working for an organization that was adopting the Medallion layer, or the Medallion architecture, was that you have some kind of person that is responsible for organizing your data in your shared data platform. It says, yeah, you as a data product, you have to put your data over here first in the bronze, then in the silver, and then in the gold. And there is always a negotiation with a central person who is responsible for the organization of your data platform that you have to engage with. And what we have learned is that this works when you have very few data teams, where like 2 or 3 teams working like that. So that works great. That's good enough. But the moment, and this is something we start seeing way more and more, when your organization is growing and you have like more and more data initiatives going on at the same time, that this approach is really becoming a bottleneck, where the constant negotiation and with the central data architect is becoming really problematic. And what we see is that there is a big push for self-service and self-service data products. And yeah, the Medallion architecture just is not cutting it anymore. So
yeah, no, indeed, I can confirm. I think Dataminded, we've been around now for 10 years. And again, the first project we did, it wasn't called bronze, silver, gold, but it had the same. It was raw, clean, and master. It was the same 3 steps. And really, it's okay if you have one data team and you have like 3 or 5 use cases that are running on there. You have 10 sources that you ingest. Then in your raw folder, you see 10 subfolders. In your bronze folder, you see 10 subfolders. In your silver folders, you see 10 subfolders. It's really relatively easy to manage. But then if you grow a number of use cases, and we have plenty of clients with thousands and thousands, if not tens of thousands of tables, it quickly becomes a data swamp. And just because you put things in raw, silver, or gold, or bronze, silver, gold, and keep on mixing up those names, you start to lose structure, right? So it's not a bad approach. What I like about the steps is that whatever you put in bronze is the raw version. You can always go back to the raw version. You don't have to ingest it. So there's a lot of value in that if you have a few use cases. But if you grow over a few use cases, or if you grow over a few teams, you quickly lose oversight, right? And quickly becomes a swamp.
Yeah. So there is definitely value in the principles of why there is the raw and why there is the bronze, silver, gold. Because, like you said, you want to do replay. What if something goes wrong and all these kind of things? So there are good reasons why stuff is there, but it doesn't mean that we cannot make it better and improve it for self-service and so forth. And this is what this webinar is about, so that we can give you some ideas how.
All right, and so we have been working with some clients who want to embrace what they call more data product thinking as an alternative, and that's also why they start challenging this approach. But maybe that brings us to, go to the next slide, to the second part. So what is the alternative then? So how do we structure data for true self-service without losing control? And it starts with the notion of a data product, right?
Yes, I think the whole data world is changing rapidly. And it's very rapidly adopting a data product thinking kind of an approach, where you think about working with data not as a project, but as a product where you work together with a team building specific data products that can then be used by others that can, again, create other data products. But as we have already learned, is that almost everybody has a different definition of a data product. So I'll try to summarize what for us the definition of a data product is. It's I like to think about it. It's a group of people that always work in the scope of a data product, and they write code, they build artifacts, they release it in their own cadence. They have their own tooling, but what they do is they have input data that they use and they convert it, they manipulate it. In some cases, they always like to have some private data. It's kind of a safe space where you can do your manipulations, your experimentation, and so forth. And the moment you have data that you want to share with the rest of the organization, you have output data and you want to share that output data with the rest of the organization.
So in a way, a data product is like an autonomous block or piece of your architecture that can take data in, do something with data, and produce data. And it's not just the data, but also the people and the tools and the processes, right?
Yes, and what is quite important, and also one of the main reasons why this helps with scaling, because each of those teams working on a data product should be able to do so independently. So they have their own release schedule, they have their own CI/CD pipelines and so forth, potentially, to release their data products, but they should be able to do so independently. And they need to do it in a safe way. What do I mean by that? If they work, so they can work on multiple data products, but they should not be able to impact the data from another data product.
And then how those data products collaborate, that we illustrated in the next picture. So imagine I'm working on a data product on the left, so I produce some output data, then what happens with it?
So when you create some kind of an output data, you want to make it available for sharing. But for example, a data output or an output port, as it's called in data mesh terminology, let's consider it's a table. But what if you are producing thousands of tables in the scope of one data output or one data product? It might make sense to combine specific tables together into what we call often a data set. It's a group of tables that you want to make available for sharing. And the reason why we split it up like this is that data outputs are very technical in nature and they're owned and operated by the people working on the data product. But when you combine them in groups of data, it's usually business people that want to keep control over it and how it's being used in the rest of the organization. And if you look at it like this, you can chain all of those data products together. And if you work like this, you already solved a lot of your governance problems at the same time, because you know what data is derived from other data just by looking at the organization of data products.
Indeed. And so in a way, it's a shift from, you used to have monolithic architectures where all the data had to go through the same bronze, silver, gold. And now we say, no, each instead of trying to go through each monolithic phase, so each data product operates independently. They publish their data as data sets, and other data products can decide to consume that data how they like it, but completely independent. So you get a bit of a federated approach, and you get to work a bit more independently, right?
Yes, exactly.
Of course, there is this thing of we haven't used the word data mesh yet, because in an ideal world, every team operates fully autonomously. Every team does builds the data products end-to-end themselves. But we do know in reality, like this is the book from Zhamak Dalgani, of course, by the book. If you do data mesh by the book, everybody is 100% autonomous. But we do see in reality some more, let's say, hybrid approaches where companies are in a current state today of a more monolithic state, and they need to move towards data mesh. And I think we have a picture of that here, where the perfect data mesh idea is this: that each team is responsible for their own domain, and within their own domain, they produce their own data products. but we notice working with clients, the reality is not always that clear cut, right? And can you share a bit of your ideas on what other, let's say, topologies are possible outside of this idealistic data mesh approach?
Yeah, so as you probably know, that data is already around for quite some time. And in many cases, we have learned that if data is organized in a very specific way, you have to keep it that way. You have lots of legacy systems you have to interact with. But on top of those legacy systems, you might want to be able to start thinking start adopting a data mesh approach. So I think the one on the top right is something we see happening quite a lot, where you have a data product or multiple data products, maybe across domains, that will offer, as I also mentioned in the blog post, the source-aligned data products, or basically when there is data from SAP and there is manufacturing data in SAP, that you will need to organize your data in a very specific way that really resembles your source.
Yeah.
But on the other side, you also have the data mesh kind of approach, where you build data products and the outputs of those data products. I think it makes perfect sense to organize them from a data product point of view. So what we've learned is that in reality, it's always going to be a combination of both approaches that will always need to do.
And then, so if you apply that, let's say that bronze, silver, gold thinking, but you want to map it to the new world of data product thinking, here is then few examples that we worked out, and maybe can you walk us through this example? So what do we see? What would we have seen in the bronze, silver, gold layer, and what are we looking at now?
Yeah. So I think just it might be interesting to understand, like, for example, this is mostly applicable for what I would like to call ingestion use cases, right? So when you are ingesting data from a source system, you usually have the bronze, silver, gold architecture, where you have data from bronze, and then you make it in a shareable form and put it into silver. The reason why I gave this kind of an example is when you extract data outside of a source system, is it really necessary to share the original files the CDC files, for example, that you want to share with the rest of the world?
Probably not.
You would like to probably offer the consolidated view of the CDC files to the end user. And this is exactly what this is representing. So it's perfectly fine not to share your bronze data, but it's perfectly fine to only share your silver data. And that it also makes a lot of sense to organize that data around your source system. Like, for example, when you have SAP data and you have like 3 teams extracting data out of your SAP system, it's still valuable and important that you can organize your data around your data sources.
Yeah, SAP in this case.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and so you could, in this case, you could have 3 different data products: one extracting manufacturing data from SAP, another billing, another HR data from SAP. So it's 3 different domains, if you will, but you say it's a source-aligned system. So what they do in their private data, how they organize it in bronze, we don't care. But when they share it to the world, it has to be source-aligned, so it has to be SAP billing data. All of that goes into one's silver, what we used to call a silver layer, right?
Yes, that's correct. But what is also important here, because in this very particular case, you do need to have some, what I call central oversight, or a data architect that tells you you have to write your data in this schema of that catalog or that database or so forth. Because if you don't do that, it might become very hard to find your data, especially in these kind of source-aligned systems.
All right. And then, so this is an example of how you can organize bronze and silver. And so the next one is where you have a gold layer, or what we used to call the gold layer, but we publish it as an output port of a data product, right?
Yes. So the gold layer in the data mesh, in the Medallion architecture, is usually where you start aggregating data from multiple sources together and create a new data asset out of that. And this is Often always happening for a specific goal or specific purpose. Like, for example, there is a data product related to churn and churn use cases where you want to get lots of customer data and customer interaction points to, for example, predict whether your client is going to churn, yes or no. So what it will do is it will probably require access to lots of input data from information about your client. You can do your transformations and you can write it in your private schema or in your private S3 bucket or something like that. But the output itself, if you organize it in a way that is always prefixed in a way with your data product. So for example, you have a schema for your data product or a folder in your S3 buckets that is prefixed with your data product. You can put all of your data outputs there. But what is the benefit of that and this approach is that if you use it like this, you can do it completely self-service. So nobody needs to be involved to organize your data like this, because I'm working on a data product, and by definition, you should be able to write your data over there, register it for sharing so others can make use of it.
So in conclusion, and correct me if I'm wrong, we used to have one bronze layer, one silver layer, one gold layer for the whole data platform. And now you say, no, get organized in data products, and each data product might have its own private data and as output data. And so the private data, typically raw data, that's the bronze data often resides in private, and then output data can be either what we used to call silver or gold, that's output data. And then you meet a nuance like, okay, maybe it's data product aligned or source aligned. You have to see what works there best for you. We're not dogmatic about it. Of course, then the challenge is if you not have everything on one gold layer or one silver layer, you need to keep an overview, right? You need to still understand who is producing what, who is consuming what from whom. And that's fits well with our next step here is how do you make this very practical with the data product portal? So we're going to switch to demo mode in a bit. But maybe just before we switch to a demo, what is a data product portal and why did you decide to build it?
Okay, so the data product portal is a complete open source project. It's Apache v2, so you do whatever you want. Maybe we can share the link.
We'll definitely share the link to the GitHub repository.
Yeah, but the idea is that we have been building data products for already data platforms and data products for a very long time. And we have learned that there is not a million ways on how to do these kind of things. And the biggest problems we faced are usually not technical, but they are more organizational in nature. How do you start a new data product? How do you access data? How do you allow people to work on it? How do you configure your tooling and these kind of things? And the portal could be your window of your data product world, and that can help you organize your data, see how all of your data products are intertwined, that you can have processes and approvals and insights and governance all in one overview.
All right, so let's open the portal and let's see how this idea of those data output ports map to this portal, right? So I'm here at the portal. This is the home screen. What am I looking at here? Can you walk me through the screen?
Yeah, so the data product portal has two very important concepts. That's the concept of a data product, and that follows the definition that we just said. It's a group of people that work together, making use of input data and transforming it to output data that again can be shared to other data products. Data set concept is also a very important concept. It's where you combine specific data outputs together, which are usually tables or schemas or something similar that you want to make available for sharing to other data products as well. And they have different ownerships. Like, for example, a data product is owned by a technical, let's call it data product owner that has a team working on data products. Well, data sets are usually owned by data stewards or people from the business that don't have a technical background in most cases, but they understand why the data is being used and where it can be used for or where it cannot be used for. So they need to have the approval ownership, as I like to call it.
All right. So let's go to a data product.
Yeah.
So here you get a list of data products. You see what their status is, the business area, the type of data product they are. So if I click on the R&D program pipeline, so this now we're looking at one particular data product, so one ball, if you will, in our landscape. And what does this thing have?
So a data product is always linked to a business area or a domain, and they're basically paying the bills. So this is the one owning the data product and putting the team and the resources towards it to actually build it. You have different types of data products, and they will define what kind of tools you have available. So on the right, we're giving some kind of a glimpse on the integrations and what it allows you to do. So if people are working on a data product, we also immediately make sure that all of the tools are already integrated and being offered in a way that it makes sense for the data product. So if you click here on AWS at some point in time, for example, you will get, based on the environment,
an error.
Yes, it's a production environment. Anyway, no, it will.
There you go. You go to AWS.
Yes, exactly. And it will give you very specific permissions and about what this person has on AWS, and all the data access and tooling will be properly configured for them. We also have support for conveyor notebooks. But what we're currently working on is integrating the portal with tools like Databricks or Snowflake.
Yeah, exactly.
So that we can make sure that people have a safe space to build their data products in Snowflake or in Databricks.
Yeah, and in Databricks specifically, there's integration with the Unity catalog.
Yeah, exactly.
So coming back to this webinar, because we're not too much focused on the integrations here, but we talked about data sets and data outputs, which I see here as well, and an Explorer. Walk me through this. What should I do to create those outputs and link them with other data products?
Okay, so you have the data sets. When you click on data sets, it gives you an idea of these are the external data sources where you have read access to.
So this is the data I can consume to produce this data.
Yes, those are your input data, as you might say.
Okay.
Then you have the concept of team, and those are the people that can work with the data products. You have owners and you have members who have different kind of roles, and those are the people that can actually work on a data product and also have access to the data because of that. And then you have the concept of data outputs, and this is where we allow you to register data for sharing with the rest of the world. So if you, for example, create
But before we do that, so now there's no data output. So if you visualize that, you see what you just said. So we're consuming these data sets as input for the R&D program pipeline, but this is the end of the road here. Nothing's out, right?
There's nothing made available for sharing with the rest of the organization.
All right. So now let's create a data output. All right. So R&D data pipeline. I create an R&D images. Right. Let's say this is an output R&D images processed by my awesome Python function, something like that, right?
Yes, exactly.
This could be an output. And then so here the integration we have currently is with AWS.
Yes, and like I said, when you make data available for sharing, it's quite technology specific because you want to share it on S3 or Glue, or you might want to share it over Databricks or Snowflake. So this is where we are very specific, where you define your data output, and we will automatically make sure once it's defined that this data product will have read-write access to that data output, and then you will be able to immediately start working towards it.
All right. So in this case, let's take, for example, I want to output some data to Glue. It asks me for a Glue database, which I cannot modify, right? So it says Portal R&D program.
Yeah. So the idea here is because you have the checkbox source aligned or data product aligned. When you check something to be source aligned, you can have freedom in where you want to store your data.
So here I can say it like in the SAP database,
for example, and then you can define tables and so forth in there. But then it needs to be approved by somebody else first. But if you keep it the way it is, the default, we will tell you this is kind of the database where you need to put it in. But from that point onwards, you can create your data output. You can define it on table level, or you can define it on schema level.
Right. Let's keep it simple. Create on schema level here. So I create a data output.
Yes.
And so now I have a data output which is linked to my program pipeline. What do I do now?
So at this point in time, we also have scripts and automation behind the scenes working there. So if you would work with AWS or with your data platform, you will immediately have read-write access to those tables.
Yeah.
And so what it means is you can now start building your data products, your outputs, and the moment you feel that it is ready to be shared, you can register and link it to a data set.
All right, let's try to do that. Let's just assume I just run my awesome Python thing and I publish a whole bunch of data in that glue catalog.
Yes.
What do we do now?
So if you click on the data output here, you can link it to a data set. So you can link it to a data set. And here you will want to link it to I think it was the histology R&D data, for example.
All right, so I asked, can I be linked? So now, because I also own it, I can go here and I can look into data outputs, right? And sorry, I'm doing your part. So tell me, what do I see here?
Because data sets are, like, as I call it, more the business side of the story.
Yeah.
And they usually have requirements related to data quality, SLAs, and so forth that you want to enforce.
Yeah.
And this is kind of mimicking the negotiation process that you have with business on whether you want to make data outputs available for sharing with the rest of the organization.
So me here, I am a business person. I'm owning this histology R&D data set, and so here I get a request like, okay, the R&D program pipeline, that data product, they have produced an output R&D images, and they want it to be part of this data set.
Yes, that is correct.
And we say yes, accept. Are you sure? Yes. And then if we go back to that data product, the R&D program pipeline that we just did, and now we look in the Explorer, we see that, well, the steps you just did, it has an output, R&D images.
Yes.
And those R&D images are part of another data set. And then the cycle continues, right? So that data set can be consumed.
Exactly. And this tool the portal helps as a process tool to keep oversight and governance, but it also allows you to keep track over who has access to your data, also for what reason, because you're working on a specific data product. You see the automatic lineage coming out of it, and it's a very practical tool because people will use it to request access to data, use it to access their tools, and all of those tools are tightly integrated. So it's a very practical tool that people use, but at the same time, it will help you with all of your governance.
So in a way, it's a portal to your data products, right?
That's.
I'm not super good at naming it, so data product portal is a product. It's a portal for your data products. All right. Well, thank you very much, Christophe, for this interactive demo. I would say definitely test out the data product portal. It's open source. We'll make sure you get a link to the GitHub repository. You'll also get a link to the slides. Feel free to contact us if you want to see, like, okay, we have this bronze, silver, gold here, or we have a data vault here, and we have central bottlenecks. How can we adopt data product thinking? We're, of course, more than happy to help you make that journey. With that, Christophe, I'd like to thank you for your talk, your insights. I hope it was very helpful. Thanks to the audience for joining, and we'll see you again at another webinar.